On the first day of August in 1943, within the confines of a stifling briefing tent, nestled in Benghazi, Libya, an assembly of American airmen, numbering in the hundreds, intently observed aerial reconnaissance photographs. These images, stark and revealing, were destined to irrevocably alter the course of their lives. The designated objective, Ploiești, Romania, a geographical designation that most found challenging to articulate, yet a locale of profound strategic importance, serving as the crucial wellspring that propelled German panzers into motion and sustained Luftwaffe fighters in the skies. Intelligence personnel directed their attention towards grainy, photographic evidence depicting 9 colossal refinery complexes, sprawling expansively across the Wallachian Plain, situated approximately 35 miles to the north of Bucharest. These installations were far more than mere industrial facilities. They constituted the veritable lifeline, the jugular vein of Nazi Germany's war machine. The numerical data unequivocally underscored the gravity of the situation. Ploiești's vast network of refineries was responsible for producing an estimated 60% of Germany's total crude oil supply, equating to an astonishing 10 million tons annually. Each precious gallon of fuel processed within these sprawling complexes served to power the formidable Wehrmacht trucks as they advanced across the brutal Eastern Front, to energize the stealthy U-boats that relentlessly hunted Allied convoys traversing the treacherous Atlantic, and to keep the agile Messerschmitt fighters aloft, defending the very heart of the Reich. American strategic planners had meticulously crunched the numbers, running their calculations repeatedly and with painstaking precision. A cessation of operations at Ploiești would inevitably lead to the crippling starvation of Germany's war machine within a mere matter of months. Panzer divisions, once formidable and mobile, would be rendered inert, transforming into static pillboxes. The mighty Luftwaffe would be irrevocably grounded. The entire German military apparatus, a gargantuan engine of destruction, was utterly dependent on the continuous flow of Romanian oil emanating from those 9 critical refineries. Operation Tidal Wave represented an unparalleled and astonishingly audacious bombing strategy, unlike any previously conceived or executed. Diverging sharply from the conventional high-altitude raids that had become standard operational doctrine, this mission mandated that B-24 liberators would hurtle across the target zone at an astonishingly low altitude, barely above treetop level, with some aircraft descending to an incredibly perilous 50 feet. The rationale underpinning this terrifying approach was, despite its inherent dangers, strategically sound. By operating at such extreme low altitudes, the bombers could potentially evade German radar detection, thereby preserving the element of surprise, and crucially, deliver delayed fuse bombs with surgical precision directly onto the vulnerable cracking towers and massive storage tanks. The delayed fuses were engineered to provide the air crews a narrow window of approximately 45 seconds to clear the immediate target area before their own ordnance detonated with devastating force. The theoretical brilliance of the plan was undeniable. However, in practical application, it demanded that crews pilot immense 4-engine bombers through an infernal gauntlet of concentrated flak batteries, entrenched machine gun nests, and menacing barrage balloons, all while maintaining speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour, with absolutely no margin for error. The architects of the mission were acutely aware that the human cost would be staggering. Pre-mission estimates grimly projected losses that could reach 50%, meaning that half of the attacking force might not live to see another day. Yet, the strategic calculus was brutally clear and uncompromising. If Ploiești were to be consumed by flames, the Third Reich's capacity to wage mechanized warfare would utterly collapse, sealing its fate. The vital petroleum flowing through these critical refineries was not merely important, it was, in essence, irreplaceable. Germany had previously endeavored to establish synthetic fuel production facilities, but these operations simply could not rival the sheer output of Ploiești. Romania's unparalleled geological endowment, characterized by vast petroleum deposits, nestled beneath the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains, had, by grim irony, evolved into Hitler's paramount strategic dependency. The briefing tent, moments earlier filled with the hushed anticipation of dread, fell into a profound silence as intelligence officers unveiled the final, chilling details of the mission. 5 distinct bombardment groups were slated to participate in this monumental undertaking, a formidable contingent of 178 B-24 liberators, each laden with formidable 1,000-pound bombs. The aircraft were tasked with executing an arduous 2,400-mile round trip, predominantly traversing hostile enemy territory, and crucially without any fighter escort whatsoever for the final, most perilous leg of the journey. Navigation would rely solely on dead reckoning and the visual identification of landmarks. Absolute radio silence was to be rigorously maintained. Each individual crew was mandated to meticulously memorize their specific refinery target, their precise approach path, and their designated escape route. There would be no allowances for second chances, no opportunities to abort the mission once committed. The 9th Air Force was, in essence, staking everything on the twin pillars of surprise and speed, coupled with the unwavering courage of these men, who profoundly understood that they were flying directly into the annals of history. Among the hundreds of airmen absorbing this momentous information, a young pilot from Texas sat, his gaze intently fixed upon the detailed target photographs. He was at that moment unaware of the indelible link his name would forge with Ploiești. His impending decisions, made high in the perilous skies above Romania, would ultimately define the impossible dichotomy between the imperative of mission completion and the fundamental instinct of self-preservation. The briefing concluded with routine weather reports and final synchronization details. Yet an unspoken, palpable truth hung oppressively in the North African heat. For many of these brave men, this dawn was likely their very last. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Herbert Hughes had celebrated his 24th birthday a mere 3 weeks prior to this fateful briefing. A native of Alexandria, Louisiana, and subsequently raised in San Antonio, Texas, he epitomized the quintessential young American ideal. He was athletic, possessed a methodical intellect, and exuded a quiet, understated confidence. Before the tumultuous onset of the war, Hughes had pursued pre-medical studies at the esteemed University of Texas, harboring aspirations of a future career as a physician. The devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, however, irrevocably altered his trajectory. Like thousands of his generation, Hughes promptly enlisted, exchanging his academic textbooks for rigorous flight manuals. By the year 1943, he had successfully earned his coveted silver wings and received an assignment to the 564th Bombardment Squadron, a constituent unit of the 389th Bombardment Group, a group that was soon to embark upon the longest and lowest bombing mission ever undertaken in the annals of aviation history. Hughes commanded a 10-man crew aboard a B-24D Liberator, an aircraft that pilots often described with a perplexing mixture of affection and profound frustration. The B-24 was undeniably a workhorse, robust and capable, but it was certainly no thoroughbred. While it possessed the remarkable ability to carry a greater bomb load over longer distances than the more renowned B-17 Flying Fortress, it was notoriously more challenging to fly, less forgiving of pilot error, and tragically earned the grim moniker, the Flying Coffin, due to its alarming propensity to explode when struck in its capacious fuel tanks. The Liberator's distinctive high-mounted Davis wing conferred upon it exceptional range, a critical attribute for reaching a distant target like Ploiești, but simultaneously rendered it inherently unstable at low altitudes. Piloting a B-24 at a mere 50 feet above the ground demanded unceasing attention, instantaneous, split-second corrections, and nerves forged from steel. A single moment of inattention or distraction could, and often would, result in the aircraft plowing catastrophically into the earth at over 200 miles per hour. Hughes's dedicated crew had undergone months of intensive training together, initially at Biggs Field near El Paso, and subsequently at advanced operational bases in Florida, before their eventual deployment overseas. They had meticulously practiced low-altitude formation, flying over the vast expanse of the Gulf of Mexico, screaming across the water at such incredibly low heights that ocean spray frequently lashed against their windscreens. They had rehearsed timed bomb runs against meticulously constructed mock targets in the desolate Arizona desert, painstakingly perfecting the intricate coordination required between pilot, bombardier, and navigator. A synchronization that could spell the critical difference between successfully hitting a refinery tower and missing the target by 100 yards. Each man understood his specific role with intimate precision. Technical Sergeant Robert Calloway diligently manned the top turret, his eyes ceaselessly scanning the skies for enemy fighters. Staff Sergeant Harold Angus crouched vigilantly in the nose turret, prepared at a moment's notice to suppress any incoming ground fire. In the aircraft's waist section, 2 additional gunners would engage targets of opportunity while simultaneously battling the brutal, roaring slipstream that surged through the open gun ports. The 389th Bombardment Group received their precise assignment during the final mission briefings. Their designated target, the Credo Romanesque refinery, an integral part of the sprawling Ploiești complex, one of the smaller yet strategically indispensable installations. Intelligence photographs clearly depicted towering, cracking structures reaching heights of 150 feet, massive storage tanks holding millions of gallons of refined fuel, and intricate pipeline networks connecting the various production facilities. The 389th was instructed to approach their target from the southwest, meticulously following railroad tracks as a crucial visual landmark, and then execute their bombing run along a precise heading that would guide them directly over the refinery's most critical and vulnerable structures. Delayed action fuses were to be set for 45 seconds, a sufficient interval to escape the immediate blast radius, but crucially, insufficient time for German firefighting crews to successfully defuse the bombs. Hughes dedicated the evening preceding the mission to composing heartfelt letters home. He penned a letter to his wife Barbara, whom he had married just prior to his overseas deployment. He also wrote to his parents, residing in San Antonio. These letters, understandably, made no mention of Ploiești or Romania. Operational security strictly forbade the disclosure of such sensitive details. However, they conveyed the carefully cultivated optimism of a man who, deep down, understood the very real possibility that he might not return. Other pilots spent their final hours playing cards, meticulously checking and rechecking their equipment, or simply sitting in profound silence, each individual processing the overwhelming weight of fear and duty in their own unique way. The chaplain conducted services for those who sought spiritual solace. Maintenance crews toiled tirelessly through the night, ensuring that every single aircraft was in impeccable mechanical condition. There would be no mechanical excuses, no technical failures to blame for whatever transpired. Whatever events unfolded over Ploiești would ultimately hinge upon human decisions made under unimaginable pressure. Dawn on August 1st arrived, heralded by clear skies, a tragically perfect day for such a perilous endeavor. Hughes and his crew assembled for their final equipment checks: parachutes, Mae West life vests, survival kits, sidearms, and maps printed on silk, designed to be easily concealed should they be shot down over enemy territory. Each man carried the sobering knowledge that low-altitude bombing runs rendered parachute escape almost impossibly difficult. If an aircraft were to be struck at a mere 50 feet, bailing out was not an option. One simply rode the aircraft down to its inevitable demise. Hughes conducted his pre-flight inspection with his characteristic thoroughness, his hands meticulously running along control surfaces, carefully verifying fuel quantities, and testing the responsiveness of the controls. His Liberator, like all the others, was loaded to its maximum gross weight, with both fuel and ordnance. The aircraft would be sluggish during takeoff, extraordinarily vulnerable during the lengthy transit, and exceptionally difficult to control if it sustained any damage. At approximately 0700 hours, engines across the Benghazi airfield began to cough to life. 178 bombers prepared to launch what would become the most dangerous mission of the entire war. The thunderous roar of 712 Pratt & Whitney radial engines shattered the tranquility of the North African morning as the formidable armada lifted off from multiple airfields situated around Benghazi. Hughes expertly eased his Liberator into formation, keenly feeling the aircraft's heavy, ponderous response. Every control input magnified by the immense weight of fuel and bombs. The immense burden of both aviation fuel and destructive munitions caused the B-24 Liberators to ascend with painstaking slowness, meticulously arranging themselves into their pre-assigned formations and aerial elements. The 389th Bombardment Group, under the distinguished command of Colonel Jack Wood, was slated to execute their strike as the second wave of attackers. Preceding them in the vast expanse of the sky were the 376th and 93rd Groups, whose primary objectives were the critical Romana Americana and Columbia Aquila refineries. Following in their wake were the 98th and 44th Groups, tasked with engaging the remaining strategic targets. This formidable aerial armada extended for many miles, a veritable sky-darkening fleet that powerfully symbolized American industrial might and the unwavering courage of 1,651 brave airmen. The chosen flight path guided them in a northeasterly direction across the shimmering expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, maintaining an altitude of 10,000 feet to judiciously conserve their precious fuel reserves. The crews settled into the monotonous yet tense rhythm of a protracted long-distance flight, their eyes constantly sweeping across instrument panels, diligently scanning the skies for any signs of enemy fighters, and periodically rotating positions to stave off the insidious creeping of fatigue. Far below, the vibrant azure of the Mediterranean gradually yielded to the rugged contours of the Greek coastline, which in turn gave way to the formidable, jagged mountain ranges of Albania and Yugoslavia. Navigation during this crucial phase relied heavily on traditional pilotage. The meticulous identification of distinct landmarks and their precise correlation with detailed maps, augmented by the meticulous calculations of dead reckoning, which involved assessing heading, airspeed, and elapsed time. Throughout this journey, absolute radio silence remained a paramount directive. German listening posts, strategically positioned across the entire Balkan region, continuously monitored Allied radio frequencies, understanding that even a single transmission could potentially alert the extensive network of defenses throughout Romania. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. The initial stark realization that something had gone horrifically awry, threatening catastrophic consequences, manifested itself as the colossal formation traversed the majestic Danube River. The lead navigator of the 376th Group, who bore the critical responsibility of guiding the entire aerial procession, committed a pivotal and ultimately devastating error at a crucial checkpoint situated near the town of Ploiești. Instead of executing the prescribed left turn that would have set them on the planned northern approach toward Ploiești, he inexplicably veered right, inadvertently redirecting the entire formation southward. By the time the gravity of this navigational miscalculation became apparent, the vanguard groups had already deviated a staggering 40 miles off their intended course. The meticulously rehearsed timing, the synchronized arrival of 5 distinct groups, poised to simultaneously strike 9 separate refineries, the very bedrock of achieving operational surprise, began to disintegrate with alarming speed. While some astute group commanders recognized the egregious error and promptly initiated corrective measures, others, perhaps in a misguided display of trust, continued to follow the lead aircraft, operating under the dangerous assumption that the lead navigator possessed some undisclosed superior knowledge. Consequently, the once cohesive formation fractured into disparate elements. Hughes and the 389th Group, demonstrating unwavering confidence in their own navigational instruments and expertise, pressed onward along their originally assigned heading. Nevertheless, the irreparable damage to the mission's strategic integrity had already been inflicted. German radar stations, with their vigilant electronic eyes, had unequivocally detected the massive aerial formation as it crossed the Danube. Consequently, air raid sirens began their ominous wailing across the city of Ploiești at precisely 13:45 hours, a full 45 minutes before the first bombs were ever anticipated to fall. The critical element of surprise, the indispensable advantage that had fundamentally justified the audacious low-altitude tactics, evaporated completely. Romanian and German defenders, galvanized by the imminent threat, scrambled to their battle stations with frantic urgency. Flak batteries swiftly loaded their formidable 88 mm guns with contact-fused shells, specifically engineered to detonate upon direct impact with an aircraft. Machine gunners meticulously prepared their weapons, ensuring they were ready for immediate engagement. Fighter units rapidly scrambled their formidable Messerschmitt Bf 109s and the agile Romanian-flown IAR-80s into the sky. The defenders of Ploiești had, in previous encounters, faced bombing raids, but these had invariably occurred from high altitudes, where flak trajectories and fighter intercepts followed predictable and well-established patterns. Low-altitude attacks, however, demanded an entirely different tactical approach: direct fire, precise visual tracking, and rapid engagement at point-blank range, leaving virtually no margin for error. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. As the 389th Group commenced its approach from the south, Hughes could clearly discern plumes of thick black smoke billowing ahead, stark columns marking the precise locations where the lead groups had already initiated their devastating attacks. The meticulously crafted operational plan had stipulated approaches from divergent vectors to meticulously avoid any overlapping bombing patterns. However, the critical navigational errors had severely compressed the attack timeline. Instead of 5 distinct groups arriving in carefully coordinated waves, aircraft were now converging on Ploiești from multiple disparate directions simultaneously, thereby generating an extreme state of chaos within the target area and exponentially escalating the inherent risk of mid-air collisions. Hughes meticulously checked his instruments. Fuel consumption was tracking precisely according to plan. All 4 engines were operating flawlessly, and the bomb bay doors mechanism had been thoroughly tested and confirmed, ready for deployment. His bombardier, First Lieutenant John McCormick, lay prone and focused intently in the nose compartment, his eyes riveted to the intricate Norden bomb sight that would ultimately guide their destructive ordnance to its intended target. The final approach commenced at exactly 14:10 hours. Hughes skillfully descended the Liberator to a mere 300 feet, the precise altitude specified for their bombing run. The massive aircraft shuddered noticeably as it dropped into ground effect, that peculiar aerodynamic cushion where wings generate additional lift when operating in close proximity to the surface. Every seasoned pilot understood that ground effect possessed a dual nature. It could either save a mission or prove fatally deceptive. While it undeniably enhanced an aircraft's responsiveness, it simultaneously eliminated any conceivable margin for error. The verdant Romanian countryside flashed by beneath them with astonishing speed, expansive fields, winding roads, and quaint villages where bewildered civilians gazed upwards in utter astonishment at the sight of massive American bombers thundering past at what seemed to be eye level. Ahead, the credo Romanesque refinery gradually emerged through the obscuring pall of smoke and haze. Its towering, cracking towers rose ominously like skeletal fingers against the sky. Storage tanks gleamed with a metallic sheen in the late afternoon sun. Intricate networks of pipelines crisscrossed the sprawling facility, resembling industrial veins pumping lifeblood into the complex. And surrounding everything, a terrifying symphony of muzzle flashes erupted as German defenders unleashed their fury with every weapon they possessed. Hughes instinctively pushed the throttles forward, propelling the Liberator with increased velocity directly into the heart of the inferno. The sheer concentrated firepower defending Ploiești far exceeded anything American intelligence agencies had previously predicted. German defenders had strategically positioned their formidable 80mm flak batteries in interlocking fields of fire, their barrels depressed to near horizontal angles, optimizing them for direct engagement against low-flying aircraft. Lighter 37mm and 20mm automatic cannons spewed relentless streams of explosive shells at blistering cyclic rates, approaching an astonishing 120 rounds per minute. Machine gun positions, cunningly mounted on refinery structures, strategically placed around storage tanks, and lining perimeter roads, created lethal crossfire zones that no aircraft could possibly traverse unscathed. The Germans had even gone so far as to position guns atop the tallest, cracking towers, affording their gunners elevated firing positions with unobstructed commanding views of the approaching bombers. What the 389th Group was flying into was not merely anti-aircraft fire. It was a meticulously engineered, mechanized killing ground. Hughes felt the initial impacts before the sound registered in his ears. Sharp, metallic bangs reverberated through the airframe as 20mm shells punched violently through the Liberator's thin aluminum skin. The B-24 was not designed with heavy armor. Any additional weight would have significantly reduced its operational range and bomb load capacity. Its primary protection lay in its speed and the fervent hope that most shells would pass through without striking anything critically vital. That fragile hope evaporated in a matter of seconds. A devastating burst of 37mm fire stitched across the aircraft's belly, and Hughes immediately observed a critical fluctuation in fuel pressure on his No. 3 engine. Hydraulic fluid began streaming copiously from severed lines, leaving a misty, telltale trail in the aircraft's wake. In the waist section, Sergeant Angus felt scorching hot metal fragments slice through the fuselage mere inches from his position, a chilling testament to the intensity of the incoming fire. Then came the incendiary rounds, a particularly terrifying development. German gunners had deliberately loaded their ammunition belts with a lethal mixture of armor-piercing, high-explosive, and incendiary shells, specifically engineered to ignite aviation fuel. When these incendiary rounds penetrated the Liberator's fuel tanks, strategically located in the wings and fuselage to maximize capacity, they did not merely puncture metal. They created immediate ignition sources within atmospheres already saturated with highly volatile fuel vapor. Hughes watched in horror as the fuel gauge for his No. 2 tank plummeted rapidly. Fuel was streaming visibly from the wing, a shimmering trail in the powerful slipstream. The intercom erupted with a cacophony of urgent reports. "Fire in the bomb bay! Fuel streaming from the left wing. We're hit bad, Lieutenant." The fire, initially perhaps no larger than a campfire, possessed an unlimited and terrifying fuel source. Aviation gasoline, with its high-octane rating of 100, is exquisitely refined and extraordinarily volatile. The hungry flames fed voraciously on the fuel streaming from punctured tanks, growing from ominous orange flickers into roaring sheets of fire that enveloped the bomb bay and began to spread relentlessly aft along the fuselage. The B-24's construction, featuring fabric-covered control surfaces, aluminum stress skin, and magnesium components, provided perfect combustion material once temperatures reached their critical ignition points. Inside the aircraft, temperatures within the bomb bay soared past an unbearable 500 degree F. The heat was so utterly intense that paint on internal structures began to visibly bubble and peel away. Hughes desperately fought the controls as the escalating fire damage began to profoundly affect the aircraft's flight characteristics. The flames were not merely consuming structural elements, they were systematically destroying crucial control cables, melting hydraulic lines, and warping critical metal components that held the aircraft together. The rudder response felt alarmingly mushy, indicating partial cable damage. Aileron control remained marginally functional, but required an ever-increasing application of pressure. Most critically, the Inferno was advancing inexorably toward the bomb bay, where 10 1,000-pound delayed action bombs hung precariously from their shackles. Those bombs were armed, their fuses meticulously set to detonate 45 seconds after their release. If the fire reached their sensitive fusing mechanisms or heated the explosive compounds beyond critical temperatures, the entire aircraft would instantaneously vaporize in a massive, devastating airburst. The Creto-Romanesque refinery completely filled Hughes's windscreen. He had covered perhaps only half the distance from the initial point of engagement to the bomb release point. Yet it felt like an eternity, like many miles. Every passing second brought new and increasingly severe damage. A burst of flak shattered the co-pilot's side window, instantly filling the cockpit with dangerous debris and a powerful rush of wind. Another shell exploded perilously close to the No. 4 engine, causing alarming RPM fluctuations and sending metal fragments to pepper the wing. The raging fire beneath the fuselage now extended at least 15 feet back from the bomb bay, its ferocious flames streaming in the 200 mètres/pied slipstream like a gigantic, incandescent blowtorch. I am from a quiet town in the Midwest, and this video topic about the Ploiești raid is absolutely captivating. The sheer bravery and unimaginable danger these airmen faced, especially flying at such low altitudes into that inferno, is truly humbling. It really highlights the immense sacrifices made during the war and the incredible precision, or lack thereof, in wartime operations. It's a powerful reminder of history's harsh lessons and the human spirit's resilience, like an immense, searing jet of flame. Other flight crews, communicating across the intricate intercom system, observed Hughes as Liberator, a B-24 bomber, leaving a vivid trail of fire and thick smoke. It was unequivocally a mortally wounded machine. Yet it steadfastly maintained its predetermined course and altitude, pressing onward toward the designated target. The brave airmen within faced an undeniable, terrifying truth. They were piloting a blazing aircraft laden with highly volatile explosives, directly through the most intensely concentrated anti-aircraft barrage then known in all of Europe. The most logical course of action, the primal decision that every survival instinct would vociferously demand, would have been to immediately jettison their deadly payload, execute a sharp, decisive turn away from the looming refinery, rapidly ascend to gain critical altitude, and then attempt either an emergency landing in a desperate bid for safety or a dramatic bailout before the relentless fire could utterly consume their aircraft. Indeed, the standing Air Force regulations explicitly granted commanders the authority to abandon missions when the structural integrity or operational capacity of their aircraft was compromised to a degree that imperiled the survival of the crew. No one, under such dire circumstances, would have dared to question that agonizing decision. No one would have been so callous as to label it an act of cowardice. However, making that choice would have meant their precious bombs would descend harmlessly onto the pastoral Romanian farmlands, failing to achieve their destructive purpose. It would have signified that their vital target would remain fully operational and undamaged. It would have ensured that the Ploiești refineries would continue their critical function of supplying the German war machine with its essential fuel. This crucial decision point, a moment pregnant with consequence, perhaps endured for a mere 3 seconds, although Hughes would later vividly describe it as an entire eternity compressed into that fleeting instant. At a scant altitude of 300 feet, hurtling through the air at a formidable speed of 210 miles per hour, those 3 seconds translated into covering nearly 1,000 feet, a distance equivalent to the length of 3 American football fields laid end to end. In that minuscule span, Hughes was forced to simultaneously process a cascade of catastrophic realities. The fire, a ravenous entity, was propagating with alarming rapidity, already severely compromising the structural integrity of his aircraft. The probability of his crew's survival diminished precipitously with each passing second. The bombs, nestled precariously in the bay, were essentially a ticking time bomb, a grim countdown to potential disaster. Inevitably, the intense heat or a catastrophic structural failure would trigger their devastating detonation. His navigator was urgently reporting casualties within the vulnerable waist section of the bomber. His engineer was frantically shouting warnings about critically low fuel quantities. Every logical calculation, every rational assessment, unequivocally pointed toward an immediate mission abort. Yet, Hughes had absorbed something profound during those intensive briefings back in Benghazi, a lesson that transcended mere rational calculation. He possessed a deep comprehension of the strategic mathematics that underpinned and justified the audacious Operation Tidal Wave. American military planners had stoically accepted that as many as half of the attacking force might be destroyed, convinced that the monumental strategic payoff was unequivocally worth such a grievous cost. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. If Ploiești were to burn, the entire Eastern Front would face an irreversible collapse. If Ploiești were to burn, Allied bombers would be able to operate with significantly reduced opposition from the formidable Luftwaffe. If Ploiești were to burn, the brutal war might conclude months or even years earlier, thereby preserving tens of thousands of invaluable lives. The mission, in its grand strategic scope, was not ultimately about the individual survival of any single airman. It was, instead, about whether 1,510 American airmen, acting in concert, could inflict damage substantial enough to fully justify their immense collective sacrifice. Hughes also possessed a critical understanding of delayed action fuses, a knowledge that rendered his agonizing decision even more profound and critical. The substantial 1,000-pound bombs nestled within his bay were meticulously set to detonate a full 45 seconds after their release. This calculated delay served two crucial purposes. It afforded the bombing aircraft sufficient time to escape the immediate blast radius, and it shrewdly prevented German firefighters from swiftly addressing the ensuing damage. A bomb that exploded either during its descent or immediately upon impact could, theoretically, be combated with standard firefighting equipment and tactics. However, a bomb that deeply buried itself within critical infrastructure and then detonated nearly a minute later, after unsuspecting personnel had already rushed to the impact site, created a double tragedy. It inflicted severe casualties among the emergency response teams and, crucially, allowed the fires to establish themselves firmly before any effective suppression efforts could even commence. These ingeniously delayed fuses thus transformed each bomb from a mere explosive device into a highly strategic weapon, meticulously designed to maximize sustained and devastating damage. The precise geometry of the bombing run introduced yet another intricate factor into Hughes's complex calculus. The sprawling Credo Romanesque refinery extended across a vast, rectangular expanse, roughly 800 yards in length. The meticulously crafted attack plan for the 389th Group mandated an approach along the refinery, extended longitudinal axis, with bombs released in a precisely timed sequence that would systematically walk explosive impacts across its most critical structures. This included the towering cracking units, massive storage tanks, vital pumping stations, and the intricate network of pipeline manifolds. To achieve this devastating destruction pattern, the bombardier required very specific approach angles and an impeccably timed release. If Hughes were to abort at this critical juncture, turning away from the target, his bombardier would be utterly unable to achieve the required release parameters. The bombs might still strike the refinery complex, but they would most likely impact on its periphery, destroying less critical structures, or even worse, missing the complex entirely. Inside the inferno of the burning Liberator, Hughes, his crew members, instinctively understood the momentous decision their pilot was contemplating. Some historical accounts suggest that co-pilot Second Lieutenant Harold Wheatley vociferously argued for an immediate abort, emphasizing that they had already fulfilled their duty simply by pressing this far into the formidable defenses. Others among the crew remained stoically silent, placing their implicit trust in their commander's judgment, even as the relentless flames consumed the very aircraft around them. Sergeant Calloway, positioned in the top turret, steadfastly continued engaging ground targets, his twin 50 caliber machine guns hammering relentlessly at the anti-aircraft positions, despite the grim certainty of inevitable return fire. This was the unspoken, profound contract of crew coordination. Each man meticulously performed his assigned function until explicitly ordered to cease or until physical incapacitation rendered performance utterly impossible. Hughes' rigorous training at Biggs Field and his many months of demanding formation flying had instilled a profound muscle memory that operated independently of conscious thought. His hands made constant, minute micro-corrections on the yoke, maintaining the aircraft's level flight, despite the asymmetric thrust emanating from damaged engines and the severe aerodynamic disruption caused by battle damage. His feet skillfully worked the rudder pedals, compensating for the aircraft's inherent tendency to yaw dangerously toward the grievously damaged left wing. His eyes meticulously scanned the instruments, the distant horizon, and the rapidly approaching target in a practiced, almost automatic pattern that absorbed vital information without requiring explicit conscious processing. This automated, deeply ingrained competency created the necessary mental space for the profound strategic decision that would ultimately define both his life and potentially his death. The Credo Romanesque refinery was now less than 30 agonizing seconds ahead, Flames originating from the fuselage fire reflected eerily on the inside of Hughes' windscreen, casting an ominous orange glow that made instrument reading exceedingly difficult. The heat within the cockpit had become almost unbearable, soaring upwards of 100 feet grade, a temperature so intense that metal surfaces burned skin on mere contact. Thick, acrid smoke filled every crew compartment, forcing the men to breathe through improvised cloth masks, desperately soaked in whatever liquid was available. The aircraft was undeniably dying, visibly disintegrating piece by agonizing piece under the relentless dual assault of fierce enemy fire and its own raging internal combustion. Hughes made his momentous decision. They would complete the bomb run. He resolutely pushed the throttles forward despite the screaming, protesting cries emanating from his damaged engines. The No. 3 engine was running roughly, its cylinder head temperature climbing dangerously into the red zone. The No. 2 engine exhibited a rapidly dropping oil pressure as lubricant leaked from shrapnel-punctured lines. But the remaining power was just sufficient to maintain 210 meters, the precisely calculated speed that afforded his bombardier the optimal conditions for an accurate bomb release. In the nose compartment, Lieutenant McCormick hunched intently over his Norden bomb sight, making crucial final adjustments despite the stinging smoke that burned his eyes and the intense heat that rendered the metal eyepiece almost too hot to touch. The Norden was a mechanical computer, a true marvel of precision engineering that calculated release points by meticulously factoring in altitude, airspeed, wind speed, and target motion. At a mere 300 feet, its intricate calculations had virtually no margin for error. The final approach carried them directly over the refinery's primary defenses. German gunners, quickly recognizing the wounded bomber as an unmissable, easy target, concentrated their ferocious fire. Tracer rounds, the visible streaks of phosphorus-loaded ammunition used to aid gunners in correcting their aim, created a dazzling, deadly web of light that seemed solid enough to walk across. Each tracer represented 4 or 5 conventional rounds, meaning the visible fire was only a fraction of the sheer volume of metal filling the air. The cacophony inside the aircraft became utterly indescribable, a continuous deafening metallic hammering punctuated by explosive bangs as larger caliber shells found their mark. The left waist gunner, Staff Sergeant Henry Leshworth, sustained shrapnel wounds but continued firing relentlessly, his .50 caliber weapon adding to the suppressive fire, even as blood profusely soaked his flight suit. McCormick's voice crackled urgently over the intercom. "Bomb bay doors open!" Hughes felt the aircraft shudder violently as hydraulic rams forcibly pushed the heavy doors down into the rushing slipstream. This action had immediate and catastrophic consequences for the fire. The bomb bay, previously a semi-enclosed space, now transformed into an open channel where 280 Tmihik winds directly fed oxygen into the ravenous flames. The fire exploded in intensity, transforming from a mere blowtorch into an unimaginable inferno. Temperatures in the bomb bay spiked past an astounding 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Paint ignited spontaneously. Rubber components melted and dripped. The bomb shackles, precariously holding the ordnance, began to glow a terrifying cherry red from the intense radiant heat. The structural members supporting the bomb bay, critical load-bearing elements of the fuselage, began visibly losing strength as the aluminum approached its catastrophic failure temperature of roughly 1,000 degrees F. The Credo Romanesque refinery, its primary structures passed directly beneath the nose. McCormick tracked the first towering cracking unit through his bomb sight crosshairs, meticulously adjusted for drift, and then initiated the release sequence. "Bombs away!" The Liberator lurched sharply upward as 10,000 pounds of ordnance dropped free, suddenly lighter by the approximate weight of a small car. The bombs fell in train, a carefully spaced string that would impact across the refinery's entire length. Each 1,000-pound bomb contained 650 pounds of trional, an explosive compound combining TNT and aluminum powder that produced both immense blast overpressure and devastating incendiary effects. The delayed fuses began their 45-second countdown, the precise moment the bombs cleared the shackles. Hughes now had exactly 45 seconds to get clear before his own ordnance detonated directly beneath him. The sheer force of the explosion of anti-aircraft ordnance beneath his aircraft left Hughes grappling with a catastrophic failure. The bomb bay doors, vital for aerodynamic efficiency, stubbornly remained agape. The intricate hydraulic system, compromised by severed conduits, had bled its fluid, rendering the doors immobile. This gaping maw not only created immense aerodynamic drag, but also acted as a ravenous maw, drawing in oxygen-rich air that relentlessly fueled the burgeoning inferno within the bomb bay. The aircraft's forward velocity, a critical parameter for survival, began its precipitous decline, plummeting from 205 mph to a perilous 195 mph, despite the engines straining at full throttle. At such meager speeds and altitudes, the heavily laden Liberator was teetering on the brink of an aerodynamic stall. Any descent below 185 mph would inevitably send the bomber hurtling earthward with the inert weight of a falling stone. In a desperate bid to avert the inevitable, Hughes instinctively pitched the nose slightly downward, a calculated gamble that sacrificed precious altitude for a fleeting surge in airspeed. The altimeter's needle spun backward with alarming speed, 250 feet, then 200, finally settling at a harrowing 175 feet. On the roads below, Romanian civilians, their daily routines momentarily interrupted, watched in stunned disbelief as the fiery bomber roared past at eye level. A terrifying spectacle, with flames trailing a terrifying 30 feet behind its fuselage. The mission, however, was far from complete. The bombing run's parameters dictated that the aircraft must clear the refinery's outermost perimeter, a gauntlet through which German defenders continued to pour a relentless torrent of anti-aircraft fire. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. A vicious barrage of 88mm flak shells, projectiles comparable in size to small artillery rounds, erupted against the right wing, their impact perforating the fuel tanks and igniting fresh, hungry fires. The right inboard engine bore the brunt of direct hits, its internal mechanisms shredded as metal fragments ruthlessly severed control linkages and fuel lines. Hughes felt a sickening lurch as the engine seized, the sudden asymmetrical thrust, attempting to violently yaw the aircraft to the right. With an almost superhuman effort, he stomped on the left rudder pedal, employing every ounce of available rudder authority to counteract the relentless yaw. The physical exertion was immense, a grueling battle against a crippled multi-engine bomber at low altitude, demanding a strength that left his muscles screaming and sweat pouring from his brow. a relentless deluge despite the inferno's heat, making dehydration an inevitable consequence. Behind them, the meticulously timed delayed fuse bombs began their destructive sequence. The inaugural explosion ripped through a pumping station, its concussive blast wave rupturing high-pressure fuel lines and sending a spectacular geyser of refined gasoline soaring 100 feet into the oppressive air. The second bomb found its mark on a colossal storage tank, a repository for 50,000 gallons of aviation fuel. The tank did not merely explode, it transmuted into a devastating fuel-air bomb, as the vaporized gasoline mingled explosively with atmospheric oxygen before igniting with cataclysmic force. The resulting overpressure waves shattered windows 3 miles away and birthed a towering mushroom cloud, a grim beacon visible even from distant Bucharest. Subsequent bombs systematically walked across the cracking towers, each detonation collapsing intricate metal structures valued at millions of Reichsmarks, and more critically, irreplaceable in the exigencies of wartime production. In a mere 90 seconds, the Credo-Romanesque refinery, a symbol of industrial might, was transformed from a functional facility into an inferno that would rage uncontrollably for 3 days. Hughes, against all odds, guided his disintegrating aircraft beyond the refinery perimeter. The fire, a living entity, had now consumed the entirety of the Bombay area, its fiery tendrils relentlessly advancing both forward towards the cockpit and aft towards the tail section. Control cables, the very sinews of flight for rudders, elevators, and ailerons, were visibly stretching and fraying, their protective housings succumbing to the intense heat and melting away. The aluminum skin of the fuselage, once a sleek protective shell, had burned through in multiple locations, creating gaping holes through which flames vented outward with terrifying intensity. From the ground, horrified witnesses reported seeing a B-24 that resembled nothing less than a flying bonfire, trailing an ominous plume of smoke and fire that extended a quarter-mile behind the aircraft. The mere fact that it remained airborne at all defied every principle of aerodynamic logic. It was solely Hughes's relentless, continuous control inputs that prevented the dying bomber from rolling inverted or plunging irrevocably into the Romanian countryside. The crew's predicament had transcended desperation, entering a realm of near-certain doom. The waist gunners, valiantly but futilely, battled the raging fires with handheld extinguishers, their efforts a mere gesture against an inferno fed by hundreds of gallons of high-octane aviation fuel. The radio operator, his station directly above the bomb bay, had been forced to abandon his post, the deck plates beneath him having heated to temperatures that inflicted severe burns upon contact. The navigator, in a testament to unwavering professionalism, attempted to plot an improbable escape route towards neutral Turkey, a distant haven approximately 400 miles to the southeast. Yet every soul aboard understood with chilling clarity that they did not possess 400 miles of flight time. They likely did not even have 40. The structural integrity holding the Liberator together was now measured in precious minutes, perhaps even fleeting seconds. The cumulative assault of metal fatigue, fire damage, and relentless battle damage conspired to tear the aircraft apart from within. In a final, selfless act, Hughes attempted to gain altitude, a desperate maneuver aimed at providing his beleaguered crew with a fighting chance for bailout. He pulled back on the yoke, trading the last vestiges of airspeed for a meager climb. The aircraft responded with agonizing sluggishness, managing a paltry 50-foot-per-minute climb rate, a stark contrast to its normal 500. At an altitude of 600 feet, he made the agonizing decision his crew had to abandon the aircraft. His voice, remarkably calm and professional despite the surrounding chaos, resonated over the intercom. "Prepare to bail out. That's an order." In the rear of the aircraft, crew members began to move towards the escape hatches. But bailing out of a B-24 at such a low altitude, engulfed in flames, and violently maneuvering was a task bordering on the impossible. Proper bailout procedure mandated a straight and level flight path, allowing jumpers to safely clear the tail surfaces. This aircraft was neither straight nor level, and it was profoundly unlikely to become either. At approximately 18 hours, a mere 8 minutes after the initial anti-aircraft impacts, the structural failure that Hughes had so valiantly fought became utterly catastrophic. A primary fuselage, frame member in the bomb bay area, already weakened by the relentless fire and overloaded by the immense stresses of continuous maneuvering, buckled decisively. The Liberator's fuselage design relied heavily on these circular frame members to maintain its cross-sectional shape and efficiently transfer loads from the wings to the tail. With the failure of this critical frame, adjacent frames were subjected to increased loads they were never designed to bear, initiating a terrifying cascade failure. The fuselage began to break in half at the bomb bay, the tail section sagging downward as its structural continuity completely failed. Control cables snapped with audible reports. Hydraulic lines ruptured entirely. The aircraft, now a broken shell, became utterly unflyable. Hughes, with an indomitable will, fought to keep the nose elevated, attempting a crash landing that might yet offer his crew a glimmer of survivability. Ahead lay open farmland, vast wheat fields that had recently been harvested, leaving behind relatively flat stubble. It was far from ideal, but it was infinitely preferable to plowing into dense trees or unforgiving buildings. He decisively cut power to the remaining functioning engines, striving to mitigate the risk of a catastrophic fire upon impact. The Liberator descended with terrifying rapidity. Its broken back rendered controlled flight an impossibility. The tail section, dragging at an unnatural angle, created immense drag and asymmetrical forces that twisted the aircraft. At perhaps 300 feet altitude and a speed of 140 mph, the aircraft was undeniably falling more than it was flying. The inevitable impact occurred in a sprawling field approximately 7 miles north of Ploiești, near the unassuming village of Tundere. The Liberator struck the earth with brutal force, its forward fuselage plowing deep into the soft soil, decelerating the wreckage from 140 Maßreichsdorf to zero in an astonishingly short distance of roughly 200 feet. The forces unleashed multiple dozens of G-forces sustained for several excruciating seconds. Far exceeded human survivability limits, even with the benefit of restraints. The remaining fuel in the wing tanks, along with the residual fuel-coating internal surfaces, ignited instantly upon impact. The wreckage exploded, not from its own bombs, but from the aircraft's own fuel, creating a massive fireball that utterly incinerated the forward fuselage section. Hughes, still resolutely in the pilot's seat, attempting to control the uncontrollable, died instantly. Co-pilot Wheatley perished beside him. Bombardier McCormack, navigator Second Lieutenant Robert Benny, and engineer Technical Sergeant Joseph Militello all met their end in the forward section of the aircraft. In the tail section, which had miraculously separated during the violent descent, several crew members survived the initial impact. The tail struck the ground separately from the forward fuselage, its impact forces marginally less catastrophic, and its distance from the main fuel fire providing a slim chance of survival. Tail Gunner Staff Sergeant Arthur Melrose crawled from the mangled wreckage with severe injuries, but remarkably alive. Radio Operator Technical Sergeant Robert Barker emerged with burns and multiple fractures. Waist Gunner Lechworth, already wounded by shrapnel during the bombing run, survived with additional injuries. These men, along with two others who managed to escape the wreckage, became prisoners of war. They would endure the next 2 years in Romanian and German prison camps, eventually being repatriated when Allied forces liberated those facilities in 1945. The final accounting of the Ploiești raid revealed a cost that stunned even the commanders who had meticulously planned for catastrophic losses. Of the 178 B-24 liberators that departed North Africa on that fateful day, August 1, 1943, a mere 124 managed to limp back to base. 54 aircraft were utterly destroyed, either shot down over the target, crashed while attempting desperate emergency landings, or ditched into the treacherous Mediterranean Sea when fuel exhaustion rendered reaching friendly territory an impossible dream. The human cost was even more profoundly sobering. A staggering 60 American airmen became casualties. Of these, 310 were tragically killed in action, their bodies either recovered from the grim crash sites across Romania or lost forever in the depths of the Mediterranean. Another 108 became prisoners of war, facing years of brutal captivity. 42 wounded airmen, many with injuries that would prematurely end their flying careers, somehow made it back to base. But the most crucial strategic question was not the immense cost. It was whether that cost had purchased meaningful results. Initial reconnaissance flights conducted over Ploiești in the days immediately following the raid provided the definitive answer. The bombing had inflicted substantial, crippling damage across the entire refinery complex. The Credo Romanesque refinery, Hughes's primary target, suffered approximately 60% destruction of its refining capacity. Storage tanks were obliterated, towering cracking towers collapsed into twisted metal. Intricate pipeline networks were ruptured, and vital administrative facilities were reduced to rubble. The Romana Americana refinery, targeted by the 93rd Bombardment Group, sustained similarly devastating levels of damage. Overall, the 9 refinery complexes comprising the Ploiești target lost roughly 40% of their total production capacity. In concrete terms, this meant that Germany's vital oil supply was diminished by an estimated 240,000 tons per month. The initial strike inflicted considerable tactical disruption upon German military endeavors, directly affecting their critical petroleum supplies, which previously amounted to approximately 240,000 tons each month. In the wake of the assault, Luftwaffe squadrons stationed across the European theater experienced significantly curtailed fuel allotments during the pivotal months of September and October 1943. This severe reduction inevitably led to a noticeable decline in their operational sortie rates, diminishing their capacity to effectively intercept and engage Allied bombing formations. Concurrently, formidable panzer divisions engaged in fierce combat on the Eastern Front found themselves operating under stringent fuel rationing protocols, which severely circumscribed their inherent operational flexibility and rendered the execution of ambitious, large-scale counteroffensives considerably more challenging, if not impossible. Consequently, German military strategists were compelled to rapidly accelerate their existing synthetic fuel manufacturing initiatives, a desperate measure that necessitated the diversion of invaluable resources away from other crucial war industries. Furthermore, the Romanian government, deeply apprehensive about the prospect of future aerial bombardments, urgently requested a substantial augmentation of German air defense capabilities within their territory, thereby compelling the relocation of vital flak batteries and proficient fighter squadrons from other active fronts to safeguard their oil infrastructure. The far-reaching strategic repercussions stemming from the destruction inflicted upon Ploiești's vital facilities thus permeated and destabilized the very core of the Nazi war economy. Nevertheless, the devastation inflicted proved to be anything but enduring. With remarkable swiftness, German engineers, collaborating closely with an industrious Romanian workforce, initiated comprehensive reconstruction endeavors mere days following the devastating assault. The Nazi regime, recognizing the paramount importance of the Ploiești complex, accorded the refinery repairs an exceptionally high priority, allocating a trove of critical construction materials, including robust structural steel, intricate specialized piping, and essential electrical equipment, resources that were in dire demand across numerous other vital war industries throughout the Reich. The formidable combination of Germany's unparalleled technical prowess in the sophisticated field of petroleum refining, synergistically applied with the diligent and tireless efforts of Romanian laborers, demonstrated an astonishing degree of efficacy. Consequently, by November 1943, a mere 3 months subsequent to the initial bombing raid, the Ploiești facilities had miraculously recuperated and restored approximately 80% of their pre-attack production capabilities. This impressive recovery continued unabated, with the refineries achieving an operational capacity of 90% by March 1944. Furthermore, the German forces had concurrently undertaken a substantial reinforcement of the region's aerial defenses, strategically installing a multitude of additional formidable flak batteries, bolstering existing fighter squadrons with more aircraft and personnel, and ingeniously deploying extensive smoke generators designed to effectively obscure the vulnerable targets during any potential future aerial incursions. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The astonishing pace of this recovery compelled American strategic planners to grapple with some profoundly uncomfortable truths regarding the efficacy of singular, isolated bombing missions. The stark reality was that a meticulously planned and executed bombing raid, which had exacted a heavy toll of 54 aircraft and tragically resulted in 660 casualties, had ultimately yielded damage that endured for a mere matter of months. From a purely immediate perspective, the rigorous cost-benefit analysis appeared decidedly questionable, prompting a reassessment of the mission's true value unless it was meticulously evaluated within the encompassing framework of the broader, ongoing strategic bombing campaign. The undeniable conclusion that emerged was that the critical oil infrastructure at Ploiești demanded not a solitary decisive blow, but rather a relentless barrage of sustained attacks, a series of repeated missions conducted over an extended period of months. Such continuous pressure would effectively thwart any attempts at reconstruction and systematically degrade the production capacity without respite. This crucial hard-won lesson profoundly shaped and significantly influenced the subsequent evolution of American bombing doctrine and tactical approaches. Thus, when American air power returned to the Ploiești region in 1944, their approach was fundamentally altered. They did not strike once, but instead launched a relentless succession of attacks, undertaking 24 distinct raids between April and August of that year. This sustained aerial campaign methodically dismantled the refineries, annihilating them to a degree that utterly surpassed Germany's capacity for reconstruction. Beyond the immediate destruction, the profound tactical insights gleaned from the initial Operation Tidal Wave fundamentally reconfigured American bombing strategy on a much broader scale. The perilous tactic of an extreme low-altitude approach, while offering the potential for unparalleled bombing precision, had been unequivocally proven catastrophically vulnerable when confronted by concentrated and well-prepared enemy defenses. Subsequent post-mission analyses conclusively determined that the rate of attrition in any heavily defended target environment would invariably be unsustainable for aircraft operating at altitudes below 10,000 feet. Consequently, all future missions reverted to the established practice of high-altitude bombing, despite the inherent trade-off of reduced accuracy, with the understanding that bombs missing their mark were infinitely preferable to the devastating loss of aircraft and their irreplaceable crews. Indeed, the audacious raid of August 1, 1943 marked a historical turning point, becoming the final instance wherein American heavy bombers would deliberately engage a heavily fortified target at such perilously low altitudes throughout the entirety of the European war. The mission's indelible position within the annals of military history was cemented not solely by its audacious tactical innovations or its significant strategic ramifications, but perhaps even more profoundly, by the extraordinary individual acts of valor that defined the entirety of the raid. The sheer magnitude and concentration of unwavering courage exhibited by the air crews over the inferno of Ploiești were, by all accounts, utterly unprecedented in the conflict. Ultimately, the Air Force would bestow 5 medals of honor for exceptional gallantry displayed during Operation Tidal Wave, a remarkable distinction that surpassed the number awarded for any other single mission undertaken throughout the arduous European theater. These highly esteemed decorations served as a solemn recognition of those brave men who epitomized the raid's quintessential characteristic: an unyielding resolve to press onward toward their designated targets, even in the face of catastrophic damage to their aircraft, consciously prioritizing the successful completion of their mission above their own personal survival, and stoically accepting the virtual certainty of death in their unwavering pursuit of critical strategic objectives. One such hero, Second Lieutenant Lloyd Herbert Hughes, was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor on August 1, 1944, precisely 1 year to the day after his ultimate sacrifice over the skies of Romania. The official award citation, bearing the distinguished signature of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, succinctly and powerfully encapsulated the profound essence of his final, courageous decision within its austere military prose: for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy on 1st August 1943. On this date, Lieutenant Hughes served as pilot of a heavy bombardment aircraft, participating in a dangerous low-level attack against enemy oil refineries at Ploiești, Romania. Flying in the last section of the formation, his aircraft was repeatedly hit by heavy anti-aircraft fire and burst into flames. Fully aware that his aircraft was a veritable flying bomb and that his life expectancy was measured in seconds, he elected to continue to his target, rather than jeopardize his formation's bombing run. With extraordinary skill and courage, he flew the flaming aircraft over the target and released his bombs, scoring direct hits, timed Talker-2s. Immediately after bomb release, the aircraft disintegrated. By his supreme heroism and valiant disregard for his own life, Lieutenant Hughes made possible the success of his formation's mission. This poignant narrative stands as a testament to an individual's unwavering commitment to duty in the face of certain demise. The remaining 4 medals of honor bestowed for the Ploiești mission were awarded to individuals whose narratives of heroism strikingly mirrored that of Hughes, each demonstrating an extraordinary and sustained resolve under the most utterly impossible and harrowing conditions imaginable. Among them was Colonel John Riley Kane, the resolute commander of the 98th Bombardment Group, who unflinchingly pressed forward with his attack, even as his lead aircraft sustained grievous damage and his entire formation grappled with severe disorientation caused by the thick palls of smoke and relentless ground fire. Another recipient was Second Lieutenant Lloyd D. Hughes, distinct from Lloyd H. Hughes, who also earned profound recognition for his unwavering commitment to maintaining the integrity of his formation, despite his aircraft suffering what proved to be fatal damage. Major John L. Jerstad, a man who had already honorably completed his mandatory combat tour and had courageously volunteered for the Ploiești mission, fully cognizant of its likely fatal outcome, perished while valiantly leading his squadron directly through the heart of the target defenses. Finally, Colonel Leon W. Johnson distinguished himself by guiding the 44th Bombardment Group through a torrent of withering defensive fire to successfully obliterate his assigned refinery, miraculously managing to pilot his severely crippled bomber back to safety, despite sustaining devastating damage. The conferral of 5 medals of honor stemming from a single day's intense combat was, by any measure, an utterly unprecedented occurrence, and would, remarkably, remain an unmatched feat throughout the entirety of World War II. This extraordinary concentration of accolades served as a profound acknowledgement that the Ploiești mission transcended typical combat engagements, representing something truly unique and exceptional within the annals of military aviation. It was a mission where conventional metrics of courage and adherence to duty proved woefully insufficient to adequately capture the sheer magnitude of the events that transpired. Indeed, the various medal citations, when examined collectively, resonated like powerful variations on a singular heroic theme. Pilots who, with grim certainty, knew they were facing imminent death, yet resolutely pressed onward toward their objectives. Commanders who, despite the availability of safer alternatives, chose to lead fearlessly from the very forefront of the assault. And entire crews who, amidst the terrifying spectacle of their aircraft being consumed by flames, steadfastly maintained their discipline and operational functionality. These were not fleeting, momentary acts of bravery, measured in mere seconds of impulsive courage. Rather, they constituted sustained demonstrations of indomitable will, unfolding over agonizing minutes, with each passing second bringing a conscious reaffirmation of their choices until the finality of death rendered further decision impossible. Following his heroic sacrifice, Lieutenant Hughes's personal effects were meticulously collected and respectfully returned to his grieving widow Barbara, residing in San Antonio. Among these poignant mementos were the letters he had penned the very night before embarking on his final mission, missives that offered a profound glimpse into the mind of a man who fully comprehended the immense dangers he faced and, with stoic resolve, accepted them as the unavoidable costs inherent in fulfilling a critical strategic imperative. Though Barbara Hughes eventually found solace and remarried, she steadfastly ensured that her first husband's Medal of Honor remained a prominently displayed and revered heirloom, serving as a constant, tangible reminder to her children of their father's extraordinary sacrifice. The medal itself, a beautifully crafted emblem featuring a distinct light blue ribbon supporting a resplendent bronze star suspended gracefully from an eagle, has since occupied various places of honor, initially cherished within family homes, and subsequently finding its rightful place in esteemed military museums, where its presence continues to educate successive generations about the profound human cost inextricably linked to the execution of strategic bombing campaigns. The enduring legacy of the Ploiești raid transcended the mere enumeration of medals awarded and the grim tally of casualty statistics, embedding itself deeply within the very foundation of modern air power doctrine. To this day, military academies and strategic analysts meticulously study the events of August 1, 1943, as an invaluable case study encompassing the intricate nuances of mission planning, the audacious pursuit of tactical innovation, and the stark realities concerning the limits of human courage when confronted by overwhelming, concentrated defenses. The raid unequivocally demonstrated that while precision bombing possessed the inherent potential to achieve decisive strategic effects, its successful execution demanded a level of meticulous coordination, impeccable timing, and superior intelligence gathering that relentlessly pushed the operational capabilities of World War II to their absolute zenith. Furthermore, it irrefutably proved that low-altitude bombing, despite its theoretical appeal for accuracy, was in practical application tantamount to a suicidal endeavor when pitted against well-prepared and formidable defensive emplacements. Crucially, the mission established fundamental principles regarding acceptable loss rates in the relentless pursuit of overarching strategic objectives, principles that continue to exert a profound and palpable influence on military planning decisions even in the complex geopolitical landscape of the 21st century. The distinguished name of Lieutenant Hughes continues to resonate and is perpetually honored through a multitude of heartfelt commemorations. Biggs Army Airfield, located near El Paso, Texas, the very place where he underwent his rigorous training, proudly dedicated a memorial plaque inscribed with the names of all the brave men who honed their skills there and subsequently made the ultimate sacrifice in combat. The meticulously preserved history of the 389th Bombardment Group, carefully safeguarded within unit museums and cherished by veteran associations, prominently features Hughes's final, heroic mission as the quintessential embodiment of the group's unwavering motto, anything, anytime, anywhere. Furthermore, the esteemed Air Force Academy incorporates Operation Tidal Wave into its comprehensive curriculum on military ethics and the critical art of decision-making under extreme pressure, utilizing Hughes's profound choice as a compelling teaching case study to explore the intricate and often agonizing conflict between one's solemn duty and the innate instinct for self-preservation. The profound and enduring question that continues to cast a somber shadow over the historical narrative of Ploiești is whether the immense sacrifice, particularly the loss of 660 American lives, was ultimately justified. Did such a grievous human cost genuinely procure a sufficient strategic advantage to unequivocally validate the mission's audacious undertaking? The nuanced answer, it becomes clear, is intrinsically dependent upon the specific time frame under consideration. In the immediate aftermath, spanning from August through October 1943, the severe damage inflicted upon Ploiești undeniably exerted a material impact on German military operations, compelling their forces to implement significant operational adaptations and initiating critical resource diversions away from other vital sectors. However, in the medium term, extending from November 1943 through March 1944, the extraordinary speed and efficiency of German reconstruction efforts regrettably nullified a substantial portion of the initial damage, leading some to conclude that the mission had failed to achieve truly lasting strategic effects. Yet, when evaluated from a long-term perspective, contextualizing the August 1943 raid as an integral foundational component of the protracted and sustained bombing campaign that ultimately succeeded in annihilating Germany's entire oil production capacity, the initial Ploiești mission emerges as critically important. It served to establish crucial tactics, meticulously identify key vulnerabilities within the enemy's defenses, and powerfully demonstrate an unwavering Allied determination that, in turn, meticulously set the essential conditions for the unequivocally successful and devastating raids conducted throughout 1944. Amidst the backdrop of the successful strategic bombing campaigns of 1944, the climactic moments of Hughes's final flight vividly encapsulated the stark, foundational principle of aerial bombardment. Piloting a bomber engulfed in flames directly towards a vital refinery complex, all while primal survival instincts urged an immediate escape, his harrowing spectacle illuminated the grim calculus inherent in such high-stakes military operations. This testament to unwavering resolve amidst overwhelming peril, where personal sacrifice is the ultimate currency, underscored the exchange of individual human lives for overarching national objectives. The inferno consuming his aircraft, the deafening roar of failing engines, and the certain knowledge of impending doom did not deter his singular purpose. While the airmen designated for the perilous missions to Ploiești had intellectually grasped this profound bargain during meticulous pre-flight briefings and strategic planning sessions, it was in the crucible of combat that its true, harrowing weight became manifest. Hughes, alongside countless other brave aviators, unequivocally honored that unspoken agreement when the critical juncture demanded decisive action. His unwavering resolve above the Concordia Romana refinery was neither born of an impulsive, irrational impulse, nor a self-destructive desire. Rather, it represented a meticulously calculated acceptance that certain monumental military aims inherently justify the most extreme sacrifices imaginable, including one's own existence. Indeed, such a profound calculation, this extraordinary readiness to relinquish the ultimate personal cost in pursuit of a decisive strategic advantage, fundamentally distinguishes mere ordinary courage from the unparalleled extraordinary valor that is deservedly recognized by a nation's most esteemed military accolades. At the tender age of 24, his life abruptly concluded in the desolate expanse of a Romanian wheat field, Lloyd Herbert Hughes nevertheless achieved precisely what the arduous mission required of him. With unyielding determination, he ensured the precise delivery of his ordnance onto the designated target, utterly disregarding the catastrophic personal consequences. In accomplishing this monumental feat under such dire circumstances, his name was indelibly etched into the annals of history, securing an enduring, immortal legacy. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic.